Every day, airlines move millions of people between thousands of cities, and every single one of those flights is a bet. Someone somewhere looked at a line on a map between two airports and decided it was worth a $200 million aircraft, a crew, a slot, and a schedule. Get it right and that route prints money for decades. Get it wrong and the airline can lose a fortune before it quietly cancels the flights a year later. So how do they actually decide? How does an airline look at the entire planet and choose exactly which dots to connect and which to leave alone? It turns out that opening a new route is one of the most carefully calculated gambles in all of business, and it starts long before any plane leaves the ground. The first question is brutally simple. Do enough people actually want to go from A to B? To answer it, airlines buy enormous amounts of data. They can see how many people already fly a route today, even when it means changing planes twice to get there. They study booking patterns, credit card spending, migration, trade links between cities, and where big companies have offices. If thousands of people are flying from one city to another every week by connecting through a third airport, that is a flashing signal that a direct flight might succeed. The airline is essentially hunting for demand that already exists but is being served badly because that is the demand it can capture. But raw numbers are not enough because not all passengers are worth the same. A plane full of holidaymakers who each paid $100 is a very different business from a plane carrying a few dozen executives who each paid several thousand. This is why airlines obsess over the mix of business and leisure travelers on a route. A route with strong business demand, people who fly at short notice and are not very sensitive to price, can be hugely profitable even if the plane is not completely full. A pure holiday route might fill every seat and still barely break even. So the airline is not just asking how many people will fly. It is asking who they are and how much they are willing to pay. Once demand looks promising, the analysis flips to cost. Every route has a very specific price to operate. How far is it and therefore how much fuel will it burn? What kind of aircraft is the right size and does the airline even have a spare one? How much will it pay in airport fees at both ends, in navigation charges for crossing other countries' airspace, and in crew and maintenance? A long, thin route to a distant city might have just enough passengers, but if it needs an expensive wide-body jet flying half empty, the numbers collapse. The airline models the expected revenue against all these costs for different aircraft types and different frequencies until it finds a combination that makes money or proves that none does. Even a route that looks perfect on paper can be blocked by something mundane, space. The world's busiest airports are full. To land or take off at a place like London Heathrow or New York's JFK at a useful time of day, an airline needs a slot, a permitted moment to use the runway, and at the most congested airports, those slots are effectively all taken. They are traded and fought over and can be worth tens of millions of dollars each. So an airline might have brilliant demand for a new route, but simply be unable to get a morning arrival slot where business travelers want it. Where an airline can fly is often decided less by geography and more by whether it can get a place in the queue. Flying between two countries is not a free-for-all either. International routes are governed by air service agreements, treaties between governments that decide which airlines are allowed to fly where, how often, and sometimes even how many seats they can sell. Some markets are wide open. Others are tightly restricted to protect national carriers. An airline can find a golden opportunity between two cities and discover that the treaty between those two countries simply does not allow it, or only allows a rival to fly it. So route planners work hand in hand with governments and regulators, and a big part of opening new markets is diplomatic, not commercial. Here is the part passengers rarely see. Airlines almost never judge a route on its own. They judge it by what it contributes to the whole network. This is the logic of the hub and spoke system, where flights funnel through a few big hub airports. A single flight from a small city into a hub might barely break even by itself, but it feeds dozens of connecting passengers onto other profitable flights leaving that hub. Its real value is the traffic it hands to the rest of the network. So a route that looks like a loser in isolation can be worth keeping because of everything it connects to, and a route that looks fine alone can be dropped because it does not feed the machine. When all of this lines up, the airline commits, and a new route is born, usually with a splash of marketing and often a lower introductory fare to build the habit. But the gamble is not over. From day one, the route is watched obsessively. Every flight's load factor, the share of seats actually sold, and the average fare are tracked against the forecast. Airlines give a new route time because it takes months or years for travelers to learn it exists. But if the demand simply is not there, they are ruthless. A route that cannot pay its way is cut, the aircraft is redeployed to somewhere hungrier, and the whole calculation begins again somewhere else on the map. So the next time you see a new flight announced between two cities, understand what it really represents. It is the end point of a huge, cold calculation about demand, about who is flying and what they will pay, about fuel and fees and treaties and slots, and about how that single line on the map feeds a global network. Every route is a bet placed with hundreds of millions of dollars. And the map of the world's flights is really a map of where the numbers just barely added up.